She saved 2 wolf pups in the forest. Next day, the alpha king made his choice. Tall, ancient trees twisted toward the gray sky, their branches like dark, gnarled fingers, and the ground was carpeted in damp moss that seemed to glow faintly in the pale light. Mist drifted lazily between the trunks, curling around her feet and whispering secrets she could not understand. Few dared enter this forest, not because of its beauty, but because it carried a quiet danger. Something ancient and restless lived here. Ira walked carefully, her boots sinking slightly into the moss. She carried a small leather satchel filled with herbs, bandages, and salves. She had come here not for adventure, but because a rumor had reached her village. Some hunters had been seen setting traps deeper in the woods. Most people ignored it, but she could not. She had learned long ago that even small kindness mattered. The first cry came suddenly, sharp and desperate, echoing through the trees. Ira froze, straining to listen. It was a small, frightened sound, and instinct immediately pushed her forward. The sound led her to a clearing, where the morning mist parted to reveal 2 small wolf pups caught in cruel snares. Their tiny bodies trembled, their fur matted with mud and dew. One of them whimpered, pressing its face against the cold ground, while the other tried to bite at the rope, but its strength was too weak. Ira knelt beside them, her fingers gentle as she examined the traps. "SHH, it's all right. I'll help you," she murmured. Her voice was soft, full of calm authority, and the pups slowly stopped struggling, sensing her care. Carefully, she used a small knife to loosen the ropes. The pups yipped in relief as their legs were freed, nuzzling her hands with innocent trust. She smiled, though her stomach knotted with unease. Saving creatures here was risky. Many strange things prowled this forest, things that were not human and not always friendly, but she could not leave them to die. Once free, she wrapped the pups in a warm, moss-lined blanket from her satchel and lifted them close. They shivered against her chest, their warmth spreading into her own arms. Ira set off slowly, her senses alert. Every rustle in the underbrush made her stop, every distant howl made her heart skip. She kept the pups safe, whispering to them in gentle tones. The forest, she realized, watched her. Not in the way trees watched in daylight, but in a quiet, alive way, as if every shadow held a pair of unseen eyes. It was a feeling she could neither name nor ignore. Night began to fall and the forest grew colder. Mist thickened, wrapping the world in a soft gray curtain. Ira found a small hollow beneath a fallen tree and made a simple bed of moss and ferns. She placed the pups carefully, feeding them warm water and crushed herbs to soothe their wounds. As she worked, she sensed movement behind her. Her hand went to the small dagger at her waist, eyes scanning the darkness. Nothing appeared, but a shiver ran down her spine. Then she heard it, a low, deep growl far too powerful for the small pups, echoing through the clearing. Ira froze. The sound came closer, and the hairs on her arms stood up. Suddenly, the mist shifted, and she caught a glimpse of glowing amber eyes in the shadows. They were large, intelligent, and unblinking. The growl ceased, replaced by a silence that was heavier than the forest itself. Ira's heart raced, but she did not panic. She knew fear could be dangerous here, but calmness might save her. From the shadows stepped a figure, tall, cloaked, and moving with a grace that seemed almost inhuman. His presence carried a quiet command, a weight of authority that made the very air bend around him. The wolf pups stirred but did not growl. They recognized something in him, something ancient. Ira felt her breath catch. The man stopped a few paces away, his gaze fixed on the pups and then on her. His face was sharp, regal, and yet shadowed with something darker, a history she could not guess. His eyes, amber like the eyes of the wolves, seemed to pierce through her, searching her soul for secrets she did not even know herself. "You saved them," he said, his voice low, deep, and resonant like a distant storm. "And now you have awakened me." Ira swallowed, her throat dry. Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. He said nothing, merely continued to watch her as if measuring her worth. The mist swirled around him and the forest seemed to lean closer, listening. Ira realized this was no ordinary man and these were no ordinary wolves. The pups moved closer to her, pressing against her legs, but the figure remained calm, patient, yet undeniably dangerous. Finally, he spoke again. I am Kale, the Alpha King of these lands. Few have ever dared kindness here and fewer still survive it. You may be the first. Ira's heart pounded in her chest. She had heard tales of the Alpha King, a ruler of both men and beasts, feared and respected across kingdoms. Some said he was cruel, others said he was untouchable, cursed to roam the lands in shadow. And yet here he was, standing before her, and she did not feel fear. Not entirely. There was curiosity in her eyes and perhaps a spark of understanding. You watch over them? Kale asked, nodding toward the pups. Yes, Ira said softly. I couldn't leave them there, they would have died. He stepped closer, his movements silent yet heavy with power. The pups sniffed the air around him but did not flee. Instead, they pressed closer to Ira, sensing her protection. Kale's gaze softened slightly, just enough to reveal a flicker of something human beneath the shadow of his legend. Compassion, he murmured. A dangerous gift in this forest and in this world. Many would exploit it, many would fear it, but you embraced it. Ira felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mixture of fear, awe, and something she could not name. I only did what I thought was right, she whispered. Kale's eyes studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Perhaps that is enough, perhaps. His voice carried an odd weight as though speaking aloud his own doubts. The night deepened and the forest seemed to exhale around them. The mist grew thick, hiding the moon and casting the clearing in silver shadows. Kale's presence was commanding, yet there was a tension between them, something unspoken, fragile, and powerful. It was not a threat, but a test. He wanted to see what she was made of, what her courage could bear. You do not know the dangers you have brought upon yourself, Kale said finally, his gaze still fixed on her. Kindness here often carries a price. I have lived my life knowing that, Ira replied. Her voice was steady now, though her pulse raced. I would rather risk danger than leave someone or something to suffer. For a moment, Kale said nothing, his eyes reflecting the pale mist like molten amber. Then he turned, moving silently back toward the shadows. We shall see if that is enough, he said, his voice fading as he disappeared among the trees. Ira watched him go, her mind spinning with questions. Who was this Alpha King? Why did he appear now, after she had only done what her heart dictated? The forest seemed quieter, almost reverent, as if it too awaited what would come next. The wolf pups nuzzled against her, sensing the tension and the uncertainty. She settled beside them, letting them sleep against her chest, but sleep would not come easily. Thoughts of Kale, of the forest, and of the mysterious bond between him and the pups filled her mind. There was a sense that something had begun tonight, something larger than herself, larger than the forest, and perhaps larger than any choice she had ever made. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying faint echoes of distant howls and the promise of storms to come. Ira hugged the pups closer, trying to calm her racing heart, but she could not shake the feeling that her life had changed forever. In the forest of shadows, under the gaze of an Alpha King she barely knew, the world had shifted, and nothing would ever be the same. As the first light of dawn touched the treetops, Ira heard the sound of footsteps again. This time they were deliberate, measured, and coming closer. The pup stirred, ears pricked. She held her breath. And then from the mist, Kale emerged once more. His eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to hold still. You saved them, he said again, this time softer, almost a whisper. And so my choice begins. Ira felt her heart skip. She did not know what choice he meant or what it would demand of her. But she knew one thing with certainty. Her life, and the fate of the forest, would never be the same again. The forest was silent when Kale led Ira along a narrow, winding path that climbed toward the cliffs. The wolf pups padded close to her, their small bodies brushing against her legs as though sensing the tension in the air. Ira's heart pounded with both fear and curiosity. She had never been this deep into the Alpha King's lands, and yet she could not deny the strange pull that Kale seemed to exert, not just over her but over the forest itself. Kale walked ahead, tall and unyielding. His cloak, dark as midnight, trailed behind him like a shadow that refused to leave. Every step he took seemed purposeful, commanding, and the earth beneath him almost seemed to hum in response. He glanced over his shoulder just once, amber eyes catching hers. "You saved them," he said again, voice low and steady, "and now you will see what that act brings. The forest is not kind to mercy. Neither am I," Ira nodded, unsure whether she understood him completely. "I do not fear danger," she said softly. "I only fear leaving those who cannot protect themselves." Kale's eyes narrowed slightly, as if evaluating her courage. "Few have the will to say that and mean it," he said. "Most speak such words lightly. They do not know the consequences." The path widened into a vast clearing where the citadel stood, an imposing fortress of black stone, built atop cliffs that fell sharply into the valley below. Its towers pierced the mist like jagged teeth, and banners marked with a silver wolf symbol flapped in the wind. Ira's breath caught. It was both beautiful and terrifying. She had heard tales of Kale's stronghold, but seeing it in person made the stories pale in comparison. The gates opened silently as they approached, as if the fortress itself recognized its master. Inside, the halls were vast and shadowed. Torches lined the walls, casting flickering light across intricate tapestries depicting battles, wolves, and kings long past. The air carried a faint scent of herbs, smoke, and something metallic, a presence she could not name. Kale led her to a room at the heart of the citadel. The wolf pups were set down, and immediately they padded toward a low fire that burned in the center of the room. Ira noticed that even here, in the presence of the Alpha King, they seemed strangely calm, almost as if they trusted him in a way she could not yet. "Sit," Kale commanded, his voice carrying authority that brooked no refusal. Ira obeyed, though her muscles were tense. She had the strange sensation that every word, every movement in this room, would carry weight far beyond what she could understand. "You risked your life to save creatures that are not your own," Kale said after a long pause. "Why?" Ira looked down at the fire, feeling the warmth seep into her bones. "Because it is right," she replied simply. "Because I cannot turn away from those in need, not even in a forest where danger waits in every shadow." Kale studied her silently for a long moment. Then, without warning, he turned sharply and left the room. Ira's heart leapt. She had hoped to understand him, but the sudden departure left a hollow ache. She followed cautiously, the wolf pups padding behind her. They entered a large hall where the full power of the citadel became apparent. Wolves, grown, powerful, and wild, paced silently along the walls, their amber eyes glowing in the torchlight. They did not approach her, yet they did not show fear. Instead, their presence was a constant reminder of the Alpha King's dominance over both beasts and men. Kale stopped at the center of the hall. "These are my guardians," he said quietly, almost to himself, "and they will know if you are worthy of trust." Ira felt the weight of his gaze. She realized that she was being judged, not just by him but by the entire citadel, by every shadowed corner, every silent wolf. The pups at her feet whimpered softly, as if sensing the tension. "You saved the helpless," Kale continued, voice echoing in the hall. "And yet you walk into my world, a world that is neither safe nor forgiving. Tell me, do you understand what this means?" Ira met his gaze steadily. "I understand that life is precious, and that some things are worth risking everything to protect." Kale's eyes narrowed, and for the first time a shadow of something unguarded appeared on his face, perhaps surprise, perhaps admiration. "Few have ever spoken such truth in my presence." For hours, Kale observed her as she tended to the wolf pups. He watched the gentle way she cleaned their wounds, fed them, and spoke softly to calm them. He saw her courage when one of the older wolves growled nearby, standing her ground without fear. And though he would not admit it, her presence stirred something within him, a flicker of warmth in a heart long hardened by duty, power, and an ancient curse he carried. As night fell, Kale finally spoke again. "There is more to you than mere courage," he said. "You possess something rare, compassion tempered with strength. That is dangerous in this world. It may cost you everything." Ira shivered at his words, unsure whether they were warning or promise. "I would rather risk everything than live without doing what is right," she said softly. A long silence followed. Then Kale turned, stepping closer. "You do not know the forest as I do. You do not know the power that lurks here. It listens. It judges. And it does not forgive easily." Ira's heart raced. She had felt the forest's eyes upon her, and she understood the weight of his words. "I have felt it," she whispered. "And still, I could not leave the pups behind. I could not walk away from life when it needed me." Kale's expression softened slightly, though his amber eyes remained intense. "You are not like others," he murmured, "and yet even you may not survive what is coming." Ira's stomach nodded. "What is coming?" Kale's gaze shifted to the distant mountains, where the wind howled like a living thing. "There are forces in this world older than kings and queens, forces that bend men and beasts to their will, forces that awaken when mercy is shown where it is least expected. You have stirred something ancient, and it will not remain quiet." She swallowed hard. "I do not understand," she admitted. "You will," he said softly, "soon enough. And you will have to choose fear or courage, trust or retreat, life or something far more uncertain." The wolf pups whined softly at her feet, pressing against her legs. She looked down at them and realized they were not just animals. They were part of the bond she had formed with the forest, with Kale, and with something larger she could not yet name. Kale stepped back, his shadow stretching across the hall like a dark tide. "You have a choice now," he said. "But know this, the choice you make will echo far beyond this hall, beyond the forest, beyond even my power. The forest watches, the wolves watch, and I am watching." Ira felt a thrill of fear and excitement. She had never faced anything like this, yet she knew instinctively that she would not turn back. Courage and mercy had brought her this far, and they would carry her further still. "You do not need to answer now," Kale said, his voice softening. "But you will, and when the time comes I will know your heart." Ira nodded slowly. She understood in a way she had not before that her life had changed. The forest, the wolves, and the Alpha King had become part of a story far larger than herself, a story of power, of mercy, and of choice. The night deepened, and the citadel seemed to breathe around them. Torches flickered, shadows shifted, and the wind whispered through the high halls. The wolf pups curled beside her, their warmth a small comfort in the vast, mysterious darkness. Kale watched silently from across the hall, his eyes never leaving her. And though he said nothing more that night, Ira felt the weight of his attention, a mixture of warning, curiosity, and something she could not yet name, a possibility of trust, or perhaps even of hope. Hours passed, and Ira finally allowed herself to rest. The forest, the citadel, and the wolves held their secrets tightly, but she felt a small, steady flame of courage within her chest. She had saved the pups. She had stepped into a world she barely understood. And she had met the Alpha King, whose choice, she now knew, would change everything. Outside, the wind howled over the cliffs, carrying whispers of storms to come and secrets long buried. Ira closed her eyes, knowing that dawn would bring new challenges, new revelations, and perhaps the first steps of a connection that would shape both their fates. And somewhere in the shadows, Kale's amber eyes gleamed with intent. "Tomorrow," he whispered to himself, "the choice begins." Dawn broke over the citadel in pale streaks of silver and gold, filtering through the high windows and casting long, slanting shadows across the stone floors. Ira rose early, as she always did, though sleep had been restless. The wolf pups stirred beside her, nudging her gently with wet noses. Their trust in her was complete, yet their eyes darted toward the shadowed corners of the hall, as though sensing something she could not see. Kale had not yet appeared. The silence of the morning was heavy, almost expectant, as if the very walls of the fortress held their breath. Ira dressed quickly and stepped into the main hall. She paused, noticing the adult wolves gathered along the walls, eyes glowing in the dim light. They did not move, did not approach. They merely watched, and she realized that their watchfulness mirrored Kale's own, an invisible thread of power connecting him, the wolves, and the forest beyond. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Kale emerged from the shadows, his cloak brushing the stone floor. His amber eyes were sharper than ever, fixed on her with a gaze that weighed more heavily than any chains. There was a tension between them now that was almost unbearable, a silent question, a challenge unspoken. "You slept?" he asked, his voice low but carrying the same weight as before. Ira nodded. "I tried. The pups, they kept moving and the forest seems restless." Kale's eyes flicked toward the windows, where the mist still clung stubbornly to the cliffs. "Restless," he repeated, almost to himself. "Yes, as it should be." Ira felt a chill. "The forest, it responds to you, doesn't it?" she asked cautiously. Kale's expression did not change, but there was a shadow in his eyes. "Not me," he said. "The forest responds to power, to choice, to mercy, to the things one does not even realize will ripple through it." Ira considered this. "So, my act yesterday, saving the pups, it awakened something." Kale stepped closer, and the warmth of the sunlit hall could not reach the chill that seemed to radiate from him. "Yes, something ancient. Something that remembers those who act with the heart, not the hand of fear." His gaze softened for the briefest moment, almost imperceptibly. "And now it watches you. It watches me." Ira swallowed. "What is it?" "The curse," Kale said, his voice low and distant. "It has existed for centuries, but it is not simply a spell. It is a weight upon the heart, a punishment born of betrayal, of love and anger intertwined. It makes trust impossible. It makes mercy dangerous. And yet," his eyes locked with hers, "your presence has begun to shift it." Ira felt her pulse quicken. "Shift it?" Kale's hand lifted briefly, tracing an invisible line in the air, as if shaping the words with motion. "Yes, what you did, what you were willing to risk, has begun to crack the chains of centuries. But it is dangerous. The curse is not just mine, it reaches into the forest, into the wolves, into anyone who comes near." Ira took a deep breath. "Then I will face it, whatever it is." Kale studied her for a long moment, amber eyes searching hers. "You do not understand," he said softly. "Many have tried, few survive, and fewer still return unchanged." Ira's hands tightened in her lap. "I cannot ignore it, not if it threatens life." For hours, Kale showed her the extent of the forest and the powers tied to it. He guided her through hidden groves, where the air shimmered with a faint silver glow, and through ruins older than any kingdom's memory. The wind seemed to respond to his presence, carrying whispers of long-forgotten voices. Ira marveled at the beauty and danger intertwined in every step, but a weight pressed upon her chest, the knowledge that each moment she spent here was a step deeper into a world she could not escape. "You see," Kale said finally, stopping near a circle of ancient stones, "this forest and its creatures are bound to me as I am bound to them. The curse," he let the word hang in the air, heavy and alive, "it shapes everything. My anger, my control, my isolation. It has made me a ruler feared by all, yet lonely in ways no one can understand." Ira reached out tentatively, brushing a finger along one of the stones. "It does not seem lonely now," she said softly. Kale's gaze turned to her. "You do not understand. I have been this way for centuries, immortal in body, yet imprisoned in heart. The curse was not placed to harm the innocent, but to punish the one who betrayed me long ago, and it will not release me easily." Ira's voice was gentle. "Then perhaps It does not need release alone. Perhaps it needs trust. Kale's jaw tightened, and for a moment the storm within him, centuries of pain, anger, and isolation, seemed to surge forward. The wind whipped around the stones, carrying leaves and dust in a swirling dance. The wolf pups barked softly, their small voices a counterpoint to the brewing tension. "You speak of trust," Kale said, his voice low, almost a growl. "Do you know what it means to trust when betrayal is the only certainty? Do you know what it means to open your heart when the world has taken everything you loved?" Ira met his gaze steadily. "I do not know what you have lost, but I know what I have learned. Even in darkness, mercy and courage matter, and sometimes they are the only way forward." Kale looked away, pacing slowly around the stone circle. The wolves followed him with measured steps, their amber eyes reflecting the growing tension. "Perhaps," he murmured, "perhaps," his voice trailed off. For the first time, Ira saw something fragile in him, not weakness but hesitation. Centuries of burden weighed on him, yet the smallest flicker of hope had begun to emerge. Days passed, each one a test of patience, courage, and trust. Ira tended the pups and learned the ways of the forest. She discovered the wolves' intelligence and loyalty, and how closely they mirrored Kale's moods. She also noticed the cracks in Kale's armor, the fleeting moments when his eyes softened, when he allowed himself a quiet smile, when he hesitated before issuing a command. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the cliffs, painting the sky in shades of crimson and violet, Kale led Ira to a hidden grove deep within the forest. A crystal-clear pond reflected the sky like a mirror, and the air shimmered with magic. The wolf pups raced ahead, chasing each other playfully, while the adult wolves watched silently from the shadows. Kale knelt beside the water, his reflection a mixture of shadow and light. "This curse," he said quietly, "is not just punishment, it is a mirror of the heart. It reflects every betrayal, every act of fear, every moment when mercy was denied. And yet," he turned to her, amber eyes glowing, "you have begun to reflect something else, something that could change everything." Ira knelt beside him, the pups curling at her feet. "Change how?" she asked. Kale's gaze lingered on the water, then on her. "By showing that courage and mercy are stronger than anger and isolation, by proving that trust is not weakness, by risking yourself when the world expects fear." Ira felt a shiver run through her. She realized then that this was more than a test of bravery, it was a test of heart, and she was determined not to fail. Suddenly, the water rippled unnaturally, though the wind was still. A low, haunting howl echoed through the grove, and the trees shivered as though alive. The pups barked nervously, pressing against her legs. Ira looked up at Kale, alarmed. "The curse," he said grimly, "reacts to the smallest change. Your courage, your mercy, it awakens forces that have lain dormant for centuries, forces that will not remain silent." A shadow moved across the water's surface, a dark, shifting shape that seemed alive and yet formless. Ira's breath caught. She had never seen anything like it, and the air around her thrummed with tension. Kale placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Do not be afraid," he said, though his voice carried a warning. "You are the key, but even the key must walk carefully. One misstep and all could fall." Ira nodded, her hands tightening into fists at her sides. "I will not falter," she said. "I will face whatever comes." Kale studied her, and for the first time he allowed himself to imagine what it might mean to trust again, to let someone see the man beneath the power, beneath the curse. But even as hope flickered, he knew the dangers were far from over. The forest was restless, the wolves alert, and the curse was patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Night fell and the grove glowed faintly with silver light. Ira sat beside the pups, watching the water ripple as if it carried the weight of centuries. Kale remained silent, his gaze distant, yet she could feel his presence like a tether holding her in place. The bond between them was growing, fragile yet undeniable, and each heartbeat carried the tension of something larger, something that neither could yet control, yet both could feel. And somewhere in the shadows of the forest, ancient eyes watched, waiting. The curse had awakened. The test had begun, and tomorrow nothing would be the same. The night was thick with mist, and the forest held its breath. Every leaf, every branch seemed alive with a quiet, waiting energy. Ira moved carefully through the grove, the wolf pups trotting beside her, their small bodies pressed close as if they too felt the weight of what was coming. Cale followed silently, his amber eyes fixed ahead, reflecting the faint glow of the moon that managed to pierce the fog. They had come to the heart of the forest, to an ancient temple forgotten by time. Moss-covered stones formed jagged steps, leading to a circular platform at the center, where a shallow pool reflected the moonlight. Strange runes were etched into the stone, glowing faintly as if awakened by their presence. This place was old, older than any story told in the kingdoms, and it held the power to either free Cale from his curse or let it consume everything he had built. Cale knelt at the edge of the pool, tracing the runes with his fingers. "This is the place," he said softly, "the heart of the curse and the heart of the choice you must make." Ira knelt beside him, her hands resting gently on the pups. "I don't fully understand," she admitted, her voice quiet, "but I know I must trust you and you must trust me." Cale's gaze met hers. For a moment, centuries of isolation and pain seemed to flash across his face, and he looked older than the legends suggested, vulnerable and raw. "Trust," he repeated, the word strange on his tongue. "I have not known it in lifetimes. To give it freely is terrifying." Ira reached out, brushing a hand across his. "Then let this moment be the beginning," she whispered. The air shimmered, and the pool's surface began to ripple unnaturally. Shadows rose from the water, twisting and forming shapes that resembled moments of Cale's past, betrayals, losses, and loneliness that had shaped him. The wolves growled softly, their amber eyes alert, sensing the stirring of the curse. "You must face it," Cale said, his voice firm now, though tension coiled through his body. "You must see it and choose courage instead of fear." Ira stood and took a step toward the water. The shadows writhed and shifted, reaching toward her with silent intent. She did not flinch. Her heart pounded, but she held her ground. "I do not fear you," she said to the shadows. "I only wish to see the truth and to help the one I care for find peace." The shadows paused, almost as if considering her words. Then they surged toward her. She felt a cold pressure, a pull, but she did not retreat. Instead, she reached out her hand, and a strange warmth spread through her chest. It was the courage she had nurtured, the mercy she had shown, the love she had allowed herself to feel. The shadows recoiled, shrieking silently, and the pool stilled once more. Cale watched, astonished, as Ira faced what centuries of his pain could not. You are the key," he whispered. I never imagined," his voice faltered, breaking for the first time. "I never imagined anyone could face this and remain unbroken." Ira looked at him, her eyes steady. "You are not broken, Cale. You are bound, but the chains are not stronger than the heart willing to fight them. I trust you, and now you must trust yourself." For a long moment, Cale said nothing. Then slowly he knelt beside her, placing his hands over hers. The wolf pups pressed against both of them, their small warmth a reminder of life and loyalty. I am afraid," he admitted, his voice low. "Afraid that if I open my heart I will lose control, afraid that centuries of anger will undo everything." Ira squeezed his hands gently. "The only way to break the curse is to surrender, not to lose control but to trust, to let your heart guide you instead of fear." The shadows rose again, more violent this time, swirling around Cale in a storm of memories and pain. Ira held his hands firmly, grounding him. "Do not fight them alone," she said. "We are in this together. You are not alone anymore." Cale took a deep breath, amber eyes meeting hers. For the first time in centuries, he allowed himself to be vulnerable. "Then I choose trust. I choose courage. I choose you." The shadows screamed silently, and the wind howled through the ancient temple, but Cale did not falter. He focused on the warmth of Ira's hands, on the pulse of life around them, the wolf pups, the forest, and the quiet power of the moment. Slowly, the shadows began to dissolve, melting into the night air like smoke in sunlight. The pool shimmered and then cleared, reflecting the moon with a brilliance that seemed almost alive. Kale's shoulders sagged, but not in defeat, in relief. The centuries of burden, the weight of betrayal, the isolation of immortality, it began to lift. Ira smiled softly, brushing a hand across his cheek. "It's over," she whispered. "The curse, it is broken." Kale's eyes searched hers, a mixture of wonder, disbelief, and something tender that had not been there before. I never thought," his voice trailed off. He bent close, resting his forehead against hers. "I never thought anyone could save me." "You did not need saving alone," Ira said. "We saved each other." The wolf pups barked happily, running in circles around them, while the adult wolves appeared at the edges of the temple, watching silently. The forest itself seemed to sigh, the mist lifting slightly, allowing moonlight to touch the moss and stone. There was peace here, fragile but undeniable. Kale stood and extended a hand to Ira. She took it without hesitation. His grip was firm, yet gentle, as if he were learning for the first time how to be both strong and tender. Together they stepped toward the edge of the platform where the forest stretched endlessly below. The air was crisp and alive, carrying the scent of earth, rain, and freedom. "You have changed everything," Kale said quietly. "Not just the curse, but me. I am free." Ira looked up at him, eyes shining with warmth and pride. "Freedom is found in courage, Kale, in mercy, in trust. You have all of that now and more." Kale turned his gaze to the distant mountains, where the first hints of dawn colored the sky in soft pinks and golds. "I have ruled with fear for so long, never knowing how to lead with heart," he said. "But now perhaps I can." Ira smiled, letting her fingers intertwine with his. "You will," she said simply, "because you choose to." The wolf pups barked again, chasing each other through the grass, and Kale allowed himself a rare, full smile. It was a smile that carried centuries of weight, now lightened, softened, and reborn. For the first time, the forest felt completely at peace. The trees swayed gently, the wind whispered softly, and even the shadows seemed to retreat, leaving warmth and light in their place. The curse that had haunted Kale for centuries was gone, replaced by the quiet, powerful force of love, trust, and courage. Kale looked at Ira, amber eyes reflecting the rising sun. "You saved more than the pups," he said softly. "You saved me." Ira leaned her head against his shoulder. "And you saved me too," she whispered. "From fear, from doubt, from a world without hope." Together they turned to watch the dawn fully break over the forest. Mist clung to the treetops, slowly lifting, revealing a world renewed. The wolves at their sides howled softly, a song of loyalty and freedom. The forest seemed alive, vibrant, and filled with promise. Kale's hand rested on the small of Ira's back, steady and protective, yet gentle. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we will face it together. No fear, no shadows, only trust." Ira nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate deep within her. "Only trust," she echoed. And so, in the heart of the ancient forest, where shadows had once ruled and curses had bound, two souls stood free, bound not by fear, but by courage, compassion, and the unspoken promise of love. The wolf pups nuzzled their legs, the forest whispered around them, and the Alpha King and the healer looked to the horizon, knowing that whatever storms might come, they would face them together. The sun rose higher, painting the sky with gold and pink, and the first light of a new era touched the land. A new story had begun, one of redemption, transformation, and hope. And at its heart were two people who had dared to trust, dared to care, and dared to love against all odds. For in the forest of shadows, the greatest magic of all was not power, nor curse, nor fear. It was the courage to open one's heart, and the strength to walk forward together.